Here in the United States, we take water access for granted.
However, in many low-income countries, water is much more difficult to obtain due to things such as local government, the environment, and maintenance issues.
Water is considered to be a universal right by the United Nations, but according to Water.org, 1 in 10 people don't even have access to clean water.
Our group has thoroughly researched 5 different water acquisition projects in foreign countries, some of them deemed a success, but many were deemed a failure.
For future water access projects, we have compiled a list of sustainable community development criteria and several engineering mindsets to promote more successful projects.
Now sit back and relax. Let's talk about
Water!
In water access projects, it's a very important thing to keep in mind for maintenance and scale of the project. And the reason this is important is because if you have something that is unable to be maintenance, then there is no sustainability in a sustainable community development project. The scale, if it's too large, you can't maintenance it. Therefore, you have no long-term sustainability of the project as a whole. As well, the maintenance requires a responsibility of the government agency that is, or the NGO that is putting on the project. But when projects don't get maintenance, then the people in charge of the project didn't take responsibility. For example, in Tanzania, the World Bank did not take responsibility for their project because they built wells and pumps in all these rural communities, but then when they broke, they did not come back to fix them. In this way, there was no maintenance capability of the project, as well as the scale being way too large. Because of this, mindsets that engineers need to take into consideration when they are doing water access projects is they need to stay open-minded and they need to listen to the community. The reason they need to listen to the community is because if it's broken, somebody needs to give the community a voice to tell the NGO or government agency that it's broken so somebody can come fix it. Additionally, if you listen to the locals can tell you when the scale is too large or too small so that the project can go off as best as planned.
Now, our next criteria for a sustainable community development project, specifically in access to clean water, is community engagement. Now, this community engagement needs to begin the start an engineer walks into community. Actually, it needs to happen even before then. Now, before the engineer even walks into the community, they need to gain a perspective that they have a lot to learn from this community and that they may not even know the problems in this community or even have necessarily the right solutions. Now, once the engineer does walk into the community, though, they need to start asking a lot of questions. Now, these questions may start from, like, basically, what do you think is needed for the community, and what do you want us to help you with? Now, these engineers need to start thinking that they're just there to help them, and they have a certain set of skills that can help them. Now, once they kind of figure out what the problem is, they need to go back and ask the community how they would like it to be fixed. Now, once this solution is found, they need to go back and start doing community mapping to, let's say they decide that a centralized water pump is what the community wants and what is best. Now they need to map, let's say, near the library. In the center of the community is the best place for this water pump. Now, before they even do this, they need to ask the community one more time to see if that is actually what they want. And to do this, they also need to engage the community throughout the whole process of building it. So once these engineers do leave the project, it won't crumble and leave the project to be sustainable.
Education is an important topic when it comes to making a community independent. After all, how can you make your own decisions about a topic if you just simply don't know enough about it? So, we know a lot about how education is important for a variety of topics. So how is education a necessity for water access? One example is, suppose that a well is out of water. The water in the water table is too low and it cannot access water anymore. A community would have to know how to fix this water well in order to get the water they need for their everyday lives. Another example comes from our Bangladesh project. In this project, a community suffered from arsenic poisoning because they're unable to identify that their water source is contaminated. They were continually sick until professionals came in to help. If the community had education about water source poisoning and was able to identify it, they may not have had this problem. Both of these examples show why it's a necessity for communities to be educated about water access education.
Hi, my name is Jess Lindell, and I'm here to talk to you about the responsibility of modern engineers to create sustainable solutions. I will focus on the importance of energy in terms of water acquisition projects. As you can see behind me, we live on a beautiful planet that provides us with abundant resources needed for survival. Unfortunately, not all areas have the quality and quantity of water needed to thrive. With new technologies, we can move and create new sources of water for these communities in need. Unfortunately, these technologies come at a cost. Now, let's go take a look into the drought-stricken Australian outback. For many years, Australia has suffered from a lack of water. The Kiwani Reclamation Plant aimed at reducing the water use in Western Australia. It recycles wastewater created by the local industries through a process called reverse osmosis. Through hyperfiltration, the plant was able to remove most of the contaminants in the water. The purified water was again labeled as contaminant-free and drinkable, and relieved the drought-stricken Australian citizens. Although this project was viewed as a resounding success, it came with one unintended consequence. Turns out, the plant was using nearly 15,000 terajoules of energy per year. This energy came directly from coal burning and other petroleum products. Unfortunately, that released nearly 700,000 tons of CO2 into the atmosphere each year. This begs the question, is this even sustainable? Many water acquisition projects lack the magnitude and impact of the Kiwani Reclamation Plan. Despite this, sustainability and reduction of energy must be considered. We have seen the negative consequences of technological advancement and must be willing to change our methods in order to combat them. Engineers must be willing and able to look at all the possible consequences when designing a solution. Alternate methods such as solar, wind, hydroelectric, and even human power must be considered in a solution definition. If engineers can learn and adapt to sustainable mindset, humanity can progress while also preserving the planet for the future. And why would we ever want to lose this?
Another important consideration that needs to be taken into account when implementing water access sustainable community development projects is the environment. Oftentimes these are neglected because they can often expand the time that is spent on a project and make the project more costly. However, if the environment isn't taken into account, there will often be bumps along the road when the project becomes too expensive or is taking too long and is in the end not successful. This happened in Bangladesh in the 1970s. UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Fund, went into Bangladesh and wanted to install millions of wells during the water decade. Because they implemented so many wells in such a short period of time, they exploited the land, and arsenic from the ground went into the groundwater and went into the wells of the people, and Bangladesh is now the country with the most cases of arsenic poisoning in the world. Because they didn't properly survey the land and analyze the implications that their project could have on the environment, the project was ultimately a failure. So, to prevent this, one thing the engineers can do is first talk to the community and see what their relationship is to the environment. This is helpful because it brings in the voice of the community and also helps to implement their values of the environment within the project, and then you're considering the environment as well. Another important thing to do is to properly survey the land for the project that you're doing. Like in Bangladesh, if they had surveyed the land more in depth, then they would have got a larger database for the larger scale of their project. And this way, once they continue to learn more about the ecosystems, they can put in a project that is properly fits into the ecosystems. They also need to properly analyze the solution that they have come up with to make sure that it's going to not hinder any environmental natures that are there currently, and that in the future it's not going to need any large alterations and is actually going to be a sustainable solution. Things like risk assessment and geological surveying are important in this, and that is where engineering problem solving can come into play, and going through and analyzing and defining problems. And by doing thorough research and thorough risk assessment, you can reduce the number of assumptions and actually have a sustainable project that supports the environment.
H2, whoa, that was some good insight, Jewel. All right, now we have some questions for you guys to ponder upon.